Welcome to Money Conversations with KJ. KJ is a lifelong entrepreneur who's made a lot of money, lost a lot of money, and found his way back again. If you're looking for a sterile how-to, you're in the wrong place. KJ and his guests will walk you through real-life situations told by the people who live them, and they are as messy as they are inspiring. Each episode will offer lessons learned, advice on how to replicate successes and avoid pitfalls, and a new perspective to power your financial literacy. Far from a one-size-fits-all, this podcast can help you build a roadmap to your personal promised land. Milk and honey for some, whiskey and steak for others, and remind you that you're not alone on this journey.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to the show, Money Conversations with KJ. I am your host, KJ, and today I got a great friend of mine in here that's going to share his story, and we're going to get enlightened and learn some things. So welcome to the show, Mr. Carlos Hank. How are you doing, Carlos?
Outstanding.
Well, thanks for coming out here and sharing your story.
Glad to be here.
I know limited about your story. I know what you do for a living, and you can share that with the audience if you like. But just based on what I do know about you, you've obviously done some right things with money, and let's hope that we can give some good lessons out there to the folks that are listening. How's that sound?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Well, let's start off with, I like to start off with mindset, the mindset around money. And I find that typically money mindsets shape very early in our lives, whether we realize it or not. So in your case, how far back can you remember when you understood what money was for and how to actually use it? How old do you think you were?
I would say when you don't have money.
Well, no, I mean, for some of my guests, I've heard them, they go back to the age of 5. Some say 12, some say 20.
So I'll phrase it like this. When you don't have money, you tend to appreciate money when you have it. And at a very early age, I would say probably about when I was in elementary school, don't know the exact age, but I started to appreciate my parents and the lack thereof of money. Okay. Because there was events that I wanted to do and things I wanted to partake in, and we didn't have the money in order to execute those wishes and desires that I had.
Right.
Now, Dad worked, Mom worked off and on, but it just it wasn't in the cards at that time for them to have the disposable income to be able to afford me the opportunity to participate in some of those events that I wanted to.
Well, I get it. I mean, at those ages, we want new bikes, we want the latest in shoes, all the things, and when it comes to those types of things, let's say shoes. I've heard a lot of people talk about shoes, and you'll tell mom or dad, I want the Air Jordans. They're like, yeah, no. You're going to go get those Nikes or, whatever other least inexpensive shoe type of thing. And I guess that's when a lot of us, we realize, parents always used to have a phrase, money doesn't grow on trees, right? I'm not going out in the backyard and picking off hundreds or whatever.
Right.
So for you, that's roughly about when you started to understand, it takes money to get the things that I want. Now what? Did you decide, like, what do I got to do?
So early on, I used to collect bottles.
Okay.
Bottle caps. When you could redeem glass bottles for, you get that redemption. You take in 6 glass bottles, you get like 75 cents or something like that.
Right.
So I started to go around my neighborhood and collect all of the glass bottles so that I could buy whatever I wanted. So I got tired of going to the store and not, walking through the store and my friends are picking up things and I couldn't. I was like, I had no cash. I had no money. I had nothing. So,
right.
And then I would ask Mom. Mom was like, again, there you go. Money doesn't grow on trees. The whole thing. And I was like, we don't have any money for that right now. So I started to. We would, buy sodas and stuff like that and glass bottles. And I was like, wait a minute. Let me take this back to the store. And so I started going from house to house, talking to our neighbors and saying, hey, I'll take your glass bottles back to the store for a small fee, So basically, they knew how much, each bottle was worth. And so I would take the bottles back for them. And I was like their courier, so I'd go take the bottles back, and they'd give me like half the proceeds. So
you know what they call that? You are hustling.
Oh, hey,
you are out hustling, there's nothing wrong with hustling. I think hustling is a great thing, right? We all hustle to get what we /want or need, and to be able to learn how to do that at a young age. I'm sure we'll get into. Probably served you well throughout your life, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because you have to learn people skills. You have to learn not to fear approaching people, because not everybody can do that. You know what I mean? When we hear these stories that you went around knocking on doors, hey, let me collect your bottles, that takes courage, right? And not everybody can do that. So commend you for learning how to hustle at a young age, right? Again, because I see hustlers can do very well for themselves as they get older and mature in life, right? So Go ahead and continue.
Yeah. So, you were talking about shoes. And so I wanted some Converse All-Stars. You remember the Converse All-Stars? I wanted a pair of Converse All-Stars. Now, I couldn't get, they had what they called them, the doctors back in the day. I couldn't get those. Those are leather shoes. I was like, I know I'm not going to get those, but I want the Converse All-Stars. So me and my cousin went to a sporting goods place, and we selected the shoes. Parents came in, looked at the shoes. Okay, those are nice. So I think they were like $20 at the time. But those were, the white ones were like $21.99. The red, blue, green, all the other colors were like $15. Guess what color I got? It wasn't the white ones.
It wasn't the white ones.
It wasn't the white ones. So I used to think, I was like, how do I get the white ones? What do I need? So mom came this far. I gotta be able to fill in that extra space.
Right.
And mom and dad came this far with the funds, so I have to fill in that extra space. So I hustled a lot. I started working, say, when I was about 15 years old.
Okay.
Actually, before then, I helped like carpenters. I helped bricklayers, being a laborer on their job sites, picking up trash, doing different things. And I developed calluses in my hands at an early age. And that was because, well, my mom was a laborer. She worked for a labor union, and she worked for PPG and all these different types of companies and things like that. And my father worked for Southern Pacific Railroad. He was a branch tender. And he'd always tell me, he says, you have to invest and be ready to take advantage of opportunities when they come. So you have to be, whether it's mentally prepared, whether it's physically prepared, whether it's, you got to have a mindset to be able to take on what's in front of you. So I noticed when I started working, my hands weren't prepared for the work that I was doing. So I had to toughen them up, and I started to develop those calluses, and those times on those labor yards with carrying those bricks and things like that paid significant dividends. But when I started to appreciate money was probably when I was about 15 or 16, like to the degree that I saw what it could do. I was about 15 or 16 when I received my first check from working on a job site where I was actually felt like I was one of the employees and not a kid.
Right.
It's like, okay, so we have a job to do. You understand your roles and responsibilities, and we're dependent on you to do this.
Right.
So I'm an employee now.
Right.
Even though I was getting paid like under the table,
right,
but I was an employee. And I had a role and responsibility. So I have to make sure that the mortar is right. I have to make sure that the bricklayers' bricks are on the scaffolding, and make sure the scaffolding is set up right, and I'm joining, and I'm doing all this stuff. And when I got that first check, I was like, $200 at the end of the week. I mean, I was hair blown back. I was like, oh my goodness, this is great.
What did you do with your first paycheck? Do you remember?
Gave it to my mom.
Okay.
So we weren't well off. So that was my first where I felt like I had jobs before that. I worked at a car wash, and I was making like $30-$40 a week. and I was like, this is terrible, because I busted my butt out there.
Right.
I was humping it. I was, vacuuming. So when your car left the back, I was the same guy that greeted you in the front and drove the car out, dried it off, put the Armor All on the tires, did the windows and everything. So it was like one guy, one car, you're taking it through and you're doing through the whole process.
Wow.
It was amazing. And I still remember the car wash and everything, and I'd sit there, and I was at the beck and call of this the manager. So I would go there and sit there for hours, and they wouldn't pay us. You'd just sit on the side, depending on the volume of cars that were coming in. And I started to think about this. I said, man, you know what? I got to find something where I have a consistent amount of income, because I will sit here, because I started to appreciate my time, because I was sitting there wasting it. I'm sitting there on the side of this building waiting on this guy to tell me that I can clock in. And I didn't have the longevity at the job at the time to be one of the guys that they just let clock in. So I was one of the guys that was kind of like, if we had the volume of cars, okay, we'll let you clock in. We'll make you a couple of dollars.
Well, let's go back for a minute. You had mentioned the advice your dad gave you, right? Mm-hmm. To be prepared. What other advice, mom or dad, did they give you with money? Do you remember where mom and dad sat you down when they knew you were out hustling and making money? And then they sit you down at any point and discuss, hey, this is money. You're going to start making money. These are the things that you probably should be doing, kind of thing, right? Any of those conversations? So
there was never a conversation like that per se. It was always through situations that would occur in our family. Okay. So if we had a bad situation that would occur where we were, like, my dad was suspended from work. There was a situation that occurred on his job. He got suspended from work, and he could not take another job, because if he did, he would lose that job. And that was part of him being part of this union. And he told me, he said, well, I got in this trouble, but these are the consequences. You make decisions in life, and then you got to deal with the consequences. And sometimes you have an opportunity to make a better decision, but you make that better decision based upon your preparation. And if you've prepared yourself to take on that next opportunity. And he said, I made it. Somebody lashed out at me. I lashed back out at him. Now we're both suspended. What do we learn here? Right. Maybe I shouldn't have done what I did. Maybe I should have taken a different road. So anyway, my dad sold potato chips, tacos, and some other items at a bingo hall under the table in order to provide for us. That was like eye-opening. I was the oldest in my family. So, you know my older brother, right, Charles. Right. But we didn't live together. I lived in Louisiana. Charles lived in Chicago. Right. But very similarly, we were like kind of like the older kids in our family, and we kind of like had to deal with like some very stark realities of life. Right. Right. And it kind of like prepared us at a different rate than I would say our siblings. Well, it sounds like, and again, I'm sure there's just a lot of families that way. And I think I want to make the point where people can learn from, which is, even though sometimes we don't get exact sit-down lessons with mom and dad, whether it's money or anything else, it sounds to me in your family where you're growing up, like it was a whole family affair where we're all learning together. Pretty much. You know what I mean? And I'd mentioned earlier how I'm finding through conversation, people don't really start learning and understand money, how to handle it, to be able to have it later in life when we want to reach some sort of retirement until they hit like 30. So they're trying to figure it out all through their 20s. And it sounds like for you were definitely figuring it out early. You weren't getting specific lessons, right, from mom and dad. And that's okay, because I say, listen, mom and dad can't teach what mom and dad don't know. Right. And so if they didn't really know specifically, okay, you're going to make money now, let's talk about the responsibility of money. In today's world, we're going to get into the credit conversation, right? The difference between wants and needs. Don't waste your money. If you're going to, that you traded time for money, and you mentioned how the car wash, that was hard work, right? Oh, yeah. Working in construction, getting calcium, you're working hard. You were trading time for money. Like, man, this money is not easy to come by, right? So there is a responsibility to handle and treat it correctly. Now, for most people, it takes time and experience to understand that. Where
do you believe if mom and dad, either one of them or both, sat you down and explained all these things, that your journey with money would be different?
Definitely. I think that now I don't know if I'd have listened, but
True.
I will tell you this. And I talk to my kids all the time, and all the things that I've learned in my life, I try to pass down to my kids, and I try to provide them the guidance and the lessons learned and the mistakes that I've made, not to make those mistakes. But what I've noticed is that they like to bump their heads themselves. And they like to learn those life lessons, sometimes begrudgingly, because we're like, hey, I done told you don't do that, but the fire is hot. You reach in there, you burned your hand. You see what happens?
Right.
So for my parents to come to me and tell me, specifically, or set me down as a lesson, I can think of one time, and you just jogged my memory. My father, he was a hustler also, and I would say, before he worked for the railroad, he worked for a telephone company. And before he did that, he worked for a radio shop for his uncle. He was always doing something. He was always trying to take that next step. Even with him having a, say, 9-to-5 job, he also dabbled in some multi-level marketing businesses and things like that, trying to add income to our family, trying to leverage his time so that he can make more money. So he started doing, he went and he got his insurance license. He started selling insurance. He did a lot of things. Now, he never sat me down and said, oh, Carlos, this is how you're going to do this, this is how you're going to do that. He never did that. He basically showed me through his actions. And I remember going to restaurants and seeing like $1 bill in a, in a frame. I came home one day and I see $1 bill in a frame on the wall. And I'm like, what's that? And he's like, that is the first $1 that I made with the new insurance business.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay. I let that go right over my head. No appreciation for it.
Right.
He didn't really explain it to me, but he started to talk to me about term insurance, whole life insurance, different things like that. Mm-hmm. And I started to listen, and we had some dad and son time a little bit where he was like, okay, well, this is why I'm looking at this insurance product. This is why, I think you should, at your age, you should look at this insurance product. And I'm like, okay, Dad, I'm in high school. I'm really not thinking about that right now. And,
right.
That's not impacting Carlos right now. It was going over my head at the time. And I went through the civics classes, the economics classes, and all those kind of things like that, but it just didn't sink in to me at that time. But when I was in the military,
it came back.
It came back. And it came back faster, and it came back stronger, and it came back like, oh, wait a minute, hold on a second here. You remember that stuff your dad was telling you? Okay, you wish now that you had listened a little bit more, but there were some life lessons there that truly came back to help me out.
I think those lessons, all our parents do this for all of their kids, right? And like you said, whatever age that we are, in 5 to 20, that we will listen or not listen, and then they'll come back to us later, is good. But I want to make the point that this is so many conversations I've had that we learn from our parents, even if they're not verbally teaching us, yes. Right? Because we learn because we're watching. And we should take that same, and some people do, not everybody does, take those same lessons in life, like at your job, watching your boss, or even just a workmate, right? Learning those things. But because I love talking about money, we want to learn money lessons and help people out there so they don't make mistakes with money, and that you have money, because not having money, which most people have experienced, is stressful, depressing. People do really silly things when they don't have money, right? And when you have money, you don't have to have a lot of money to have good peace of mind, not stress about it. So when you started working, getting your regular paychecks, what was your mindset with? Were you a big saver? Were you a big spender? Or do you think you're down the middle?
I was a big spender.
Okay.
So
you spend what you made.
So I spent what I made because I didn't have a lot, I got influence from friends, and it seemed like I took the negative influence over the positive influence. But I would say that it was powerful as a young kid growing up to, once you did save some money and once you purchased an item on your own, that was like an aha moment. It's like, wait a minute, hold on a second here. I can actually save some money and I can get actually what I want. And that kind of like changed my mindset. And when I joined the military, it was, I still remember it like it was yesterday. I made $525 every 2 weeks, $525 every 2 weeks. And I was married and very young. And I tell you what, that was like one of the most humbling experiences I've ever had, because my rent was $500 a month. My car note was $266.71, and my insurance was $123 a month. I still remember those figures. And the reason why I remember those figures is because we had to budget. We had to budget and we had to stay on task. We didn't have a lot of discretionary income. And as I started to promote, I started to see the value of promoting very quickly, and started seeing the value of investing in myself, going to different classes and getting to having a better opportunity for myself early on. It's like, okay, wait a minute, I got to figure this out. I got to try to get promoted because I know how much he makes, and he makes significantly more than me. I need to be able to get, how do I get there? So I started to seek out mentors.
Okay. How old do you think you were when you got your first mentor?
Oh boy, as a kid, I would say I was probably I was in the Boy Scouts when I got my first mentor.
Okay.
And that was a very I would say it was more about life. That was a life mentor.
A life mentor.
That was just basically just how to be a young man and how to treat young ladies and how to be a man. And to just groom me, how to tie a tie, how to do this, how to shine my shoes, how to do how to do those things. So
right.
That was what the Boy Scouts that mentor taught me. But once I was in the military, I developed mentors as in for personal growth, and I think my sergeants they mentored me, pulled me aside, hey, you should do this, and I thank them for having the give a damn to actually say, hey, I'm gonna help this kid out.
Right.
I'm gonna help this guy out, because there's a lot of us out there that they had a ton of people they could have chosen, but they chose me.
So I highly recommend to people, if at all possible, to get mentors. Not a lot of people do some, and then they'll do them later, business mentors and whatnot. Life mentors are great, but I still haven't found a mentor that would teach about money, right? And I find that conversations with money are uncomfortable for people. I find that they're uncomfortable because, one, you either have money or you don't have money, and either way, you're kind of embarrassed, right? If you don't have it, I'm embarrassed to let you know I don't have no money, and if you have a lot of money or whatever you might have, you're embarrassed to tell people, oftentimes because they're afraid that someone's going to ask you for something, right? And so people don't talk about it. And you had mentioned something a minute ago when you were younger and your peers, right? We try to keep up with our peers, and people need to realize you become the person of the 5 people you hang with. It's a fact.
You do.
Whether you're 10 years old, 20, 30, whatever age you are. So it's important to definitely surround yourself with the right people. And if you're surrounding yourself with people that aren't doing the right things in life, you need to get a new circle. Right? You need to be able to have the courage to step out.
Oh, yes.
And do that. And so with money, right, it sounds like with most people, we're figuring it out along the way, right? Through life lessons,
yes.
Through knowing how your family raised you, being, which not a lot of means, right? There wasn't a lot of what you call extra discretionary income, but you also developed a good hustle habit. Right? You're a hustler, and you're going to figure it out one way or the other. Like, what do I have to do to get from where I'm at to the next level?
Right. So during my time in the military, I started to reach out to folks. And one of the gentlemen that I reached out to was on our base, and he looked like $1 million. It's like he drove a nice car. He always looked great, and I was like, man, but he's only this rank. I'm like, I forgot what his rank was, but he was like, he wasn't an officer, so he wasn't that high of rank, but he just looked and he carried himself with such a such swag that it was like, this guy here is just like, he's got money or something.
Right.
So one day I'm walking through the squadron, and he sees me, and I come into him and say, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? And I start chatting with him, and he says, why don't you come to it was like the enlisted club or whatever. He said, come over there at noontime tomorrow. I got a class that's going on. I was like, okay. What's it about? I'll tell you when you get there. You sure? I'll tell you when you get there. So it was basically an investing class. And he's like, so after the class was over, he told me, he says, I knew if I'd have told you if it was an investing class, you wasn't going to be here.
Right.
You were going to, okay, you were not showing up. So how this goes, I meet Rick Wagner from this class. Rick Wagner works for an investment company. He had started his own investment company. Drove I still remember, drove like a S series Mercedes Benz or something like that. And he's like, this guy looked like he's got money falling out of his pockets. And he came to me and he says, okay, what kind of car do you want to drive? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? He said, what are your aspirations? And we go through this whole thing. We sit down with my wife and everything. We go through all this. And he's like, all right, how much money are you saving? What are you giving up in order to get? And that was like another light bulb moment for me. I was like, okay. I was at the time, I think I was a corporal, E4. Wasn't making a lot of money, but I was in base housing, and I had a little bit of discretionary income. That triggered another thing for me. And then what that triggered was I got back into my hustle mode. Because once we broke down everything all the money that I made, all the money that she made, we put our bills in line and look at how responsible we were with our money and our credit and everything, I came to realize you're wasting a lot of money that you have that you could be working for you in other ways. So he showed me some breakdowns, like if you invested in this company at this time or whatever, this is how much money you would have had, and this is how much you would have had to invest. And it wasn't a significant amount of money. Could you have invested that? Like, yeah, I could have invested. Well, this is how much, he shows, this is the equation. This is how much money you could have had at this time. I was like, wow. But from what I gained from Rick was I wasn't prepared mentally at that time to accept or to take advantage of that particular opportunity.
What do you mean you weren't prepared? Why?
I wasn't prepared. I didn't have the knowledge, and the people that I surrounded myself with wasn't talking about investments. They weren't talking about money. They were talking about other things. And like you said, you're a product of your environment. You're a product of people that you hang around. So I was at the upper echelon of those folks that I was hanging around with, but I was kind of like topped out. I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't doing anything, but I was trying to take myself to the next level. I'm reaching out for different things. So speak with Rick. Rick puts me on a plan, and we started investing.
How old were you then?
I was about 21, 22.
Okay. All right. That's, again, I want to make sure that people understand, one, the sooner we start investing, the better, because if you understand the rule of 72 compounding, that's all about time, right? And if you start investing in your early 20s, by the time you hit your 50s, even if you just invest maybe just a couple of $1,000s a year, it's going to compound and be a pretty nice chunk of money down the road. So the fact that you had the wherewithal to, one, a lot of people, when that gentleman said, hey, come to this meeting tomorrow, and he said, I'm not going to tell you what it is, wouldn't have showed up.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was an opportunity, right? And I talk about opportunity a lot because I really, really believe that we all have opportunities around us all of the time on a regular basis. You have to recognize that, number one. Two, you have to take advantage of whatever that opportunity is. You got to answer the door to opportunity when it's knocking. You did that. And by saying, okay, and just I'll go, which was the following day or whatever it was, and it opened your eyes to investing. Imagine where your life would be today if that one pivotal time in life for you, you didn't go to that meeting.
I wouldn't appreciate money the way I do today.
Exactly.
And nor would I've had the insight. So I think it was critical in my preparation and building my knowledge base of and appreciating, money. And what Rick, and God rest his soul, the gentleman passed away a few years ago, but I still invest with his daughter to this day through mutual funds and things. And I sat there and I would he would always write me notes and send me things and, hey, you're doing great, you're doing this, this is outstanding. Continue to do this because this is what you're going to see down the road. Now, as I progressed in my career and decided to leave the military and join the police department, so I wasn't making a lot of money. So I still was at that point where the money wasn't coming in at a point where I can invest a lot. So I again, started up my hustle again. I went to work at the base enlisted club, staff NCO club. So I had a friend of mine who says, hey man, they're looking for somebody to come over here and be a barback. I'm like, a barback? I'm not a barback. And he's like, so he was going to bartender school and stuff like that. And he's like, hey, well, just come over here and just hang out with me for a little bit, see what's up. I said, okay. I went over there, and next thing you know, I became a barback. So now I'm this barback, and I'm like, okay, I now have more discretionary income, and now I'm investing more. Because now the military paycheck that was coming in is taking care of my bills
right.
on a daily basis, on a monthly basis. But that money that I started to make as a barback, I started to say, okay, well, let me put a little bit more into the investment, because Rick would come back and he would retouch. It's like, how are you doing? Let's look at your financial portfolio. Let's see what we got going on here. Oh, wait a minute. You took on another job. Like, yeah. He's like, oh, well, let's see if we can do this, do that. So Rick was kind of like that person to kind of like continue to keep me on the path. And I was trying to develop some good habits at that time. And I didn't know it at the time. I was just kind of like going through the motions and saying, okay, I'm doing some investing. I'm doing this. And it wasn't very much at the time, but I was learning these life lessons. And he was, I would say that he was one of the ones that kind of like peeled my eyelids open. It was like, hey, no, look at this. You're going to be this age at this time. You're going to be my age at this time. He goes, and this is where I started. And if you want to drive a car like me, you can do it if you want to.
Right.
And this is how you can do it. But it was, that continue to take those steps, those positive steps in the right direction, and continue to put myself in a position where I could save more and invest that money, helped us out tremendously, because we did not have smooth seas all the time.
Right.
And because life threw a lot of hiccups at me. And where if I didn't have that money if I didn't have that money sitting off to the side in those investment accounts, I would have been a hurting puppy.
So I think the lesson here for the listeners out there is this: oftentimes in life, right, when whatever our jobs are making us, that is just enough to pay the actual bills that you have, and you don't have that extra money to put to work, because nothing makes more money than money. You went out and because your hustling abilities that you learned at a young age, like, I want something, I'm going to go do something, whatever it takes to go do that. You learned how to hustle. And again, not a lot of people learn how to hustle or understand the value of being a hustler, being out there doing what you had to do, and hustling later in life, because you had you had your military career, then you had your metro career, but that wasn't enough. You're like, you told yourself, I need more, and the only way I could do that, I got to go hustle something. And at one point you became a barback, which you didn't want to do, but I'm sure all of us do things we don't want to do, but they're not forever anyway, right? I don't know how long you did it, a year or two, whatever it was, but the money, even if you put 20% of that side hustle money away for investing for future, and the rest of it for whatever the other things you needed in life. I think the lesson here, guys, that you're listening is, man, if you're falling short, it's not always go get a bigger, better job. Maybe I just need a side hustle here, right? And sometimes side hustles become your main gig because you fall in love with whatever you're doing.
And I would say that once you see, for me, it was like once I could see what it was doing, how it was changing up my life, I was walking around with $300-400. Now back then, walking around with $300-400 in your pocket was like, oh my God,
right?
This guy's like,
he's loaded.
Oh, he's loaded.
He's
right?
loaded.
And I'm like, here I am, a sergeant now in the military, and I'm like, got $300 or $400 in my pocket all the time. I am helping people out, I'm blessing other people. You know, some of my troops, I'm helping them out.
Yeah.
And still having the discretionary income to help my family and to do different things in my life. And so I started to get more of an appreciation for one, working hard, one, you know, and then just putting yourself out there. I even went to the extent I was looking for something else. I kept on looking for something else. Because I knew the military was great. It taught me a lot, but I wasn't, and I was probably going to be a career Marine. But what I decided was the Marine Corps wanted to send me overseas 2 years unaccompanied, and I was like, I'm not having that.
Right. I
had 3 small kids, and I was like, I'm not having that. So I'm doing well. I'm going to college. I'm doing some different things. I have a decent income. We're living okay. But I was like, I got to do something else. And I looked at going to school for different things. And I started my criminal justice career. And I started, because I'd always wanted to be a cop. I since knee high to a tadpole, I wanted to be a cop. I don't know why. I wanted to be a Marine. I wanted to be a cop. How did it happen? I don't know, because I tell you what, I never had a good relationship with cops. I'm just gonna be honest. I never had a good, the cops coming over to Carlos's house was not good. Somebody was going to jail. It wasn't me.
Right.
But it was one of those things where, you know, we had some challenges in our family, and some people went to jail. But and I hated. I mean, at one time I hated cops. And one thing my mom told me, she said, are you going to be part of the solution, or are you going to be part of the problem? Are you let what these cops did? Now, I knew other ones, the other police officers that were great cops. And just so happened my neighbor was a cop. And I knew that he was a good guy. But she's like, are you going to let those bad apples shape how you look at all law enforcement? And I was like, so, right. You know, it took a little bit of time. But I developed a desire in my heart. I said, you know what, I want to do this.
Did making that decision, and you said a minute ago you were going to make the military a career, and then based on what they wanted you to do, you chose not to, and then you chose to go into law enforcement. And because I want to roll into retirement, at what point or what age were you when you started thinking and taking your retirement more serious?
So that was when I got here in 2000. I looked at it, I said, wait a minute, you just left 12 and a half years in the Marine Corps. You're starting all over again.
At what age?
28.
Okay. They're still young.
Still young. But I mean, you're talking about, I was on the path to retire in 8 years from the Marine Corps, you know, so I didn't start another career.
Right.
With income coming in for the rest of my life. I'm stopping that and starting another career. And as I started my first day on the job, we're in the academy, and I hear some people, I hear this gentleman come up, and he's part of the union, and he's talking, and he says, listen to me. He says, I want you all to listen to me and listen good. He said, you're going to have an opportunity here to change your life forever. He goes, so people don't realize how good a career you can have with this law enforcement agency. And I said, what is this guy talking about? I said, but I want to listen, because I need to make sure that I'm on. He goes, you can have a great retirement. So they had a couple of guys that had retired, came in and talked about themselves and their success. And when I heard those gentlemen speak and talk and listen to what they were retiring on, like the like 6-figure incomes, I was like, oh, wait a minute, hold on a second. My ears perked up. I'm like, oh, so I can do that here? I didn't know that coming in the door. I just knew I wanted to be a cop.
Right.
You know, I was like, hey, drive a fast car, you know, whatever, you know, have some fun, you know, take some people to jail, protect the community, all this good stuff. That was great. But now I get to retire from this and have a great retirement. Okay.
There's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
So how do I get there? And they started talking, and then they started talking about investing. And I had my ears perked up even more. So because I'm leaving the military, had some bad, I didn't say bad credit, but I had some debts. My debts were all paid on time. One thing I learned, I paid my debts on time. So my credit score was, I always was able to get, once I got my credit established, I always had good credit. So I will tell you this. He said, you all are going to have this opportunity to change your family's lives. And this is how you're going to do it. And he said, you're going to get this thing called longevity, or you're going to get this, this extra pay or whatever.
Right.
And he says, I've never one day spent longevity on my life, on my daily life, the things I do in my daily life. He goes, so that doesn't come in my house for my light bill, my car payment, my rent, or my mortgage. I invest that. And I started thinking about that. I was like, so they're going to give me some extra money on this check, and that's aside from my regular pay. And I just started thinking, I was like, you know what? All right. So when I started receiving that, I started investing it. And I kept investing it. So to this day, I still haven't used any of that money.
So I think the lesson here, guys, out there is one, man, Carl, you actually started investing way earlier than most. Your early 20s.
Got lucky.
And whether or not, again, I think the misconception out there when you tell people, listen, you got to invest, they think like, well, I don't have any money to invest. And you do. Yes, you do. Your one gentleman broke it down for you. And you'll always find if you break down a budget that you're wasting money. And even $100 a month is going to add up. $25 a week, right? $4 a day. And we all could save that. And it will, again, the earlier you start, the better. Obviously, you start at any and all ages, you're going to see bigger rewards when you start earlier because of a compounding effect. So that you felt very comfortable at an early age, you were going to have a nice retirement.
I felt at the age of 28, I had embarked upon a career that could give me a very stable retirement for me and my family.
All right.
And that could really change our lives, because I'm coming from a fixed income in the military where it doesn't matter how many hours you work, you're still going to get the same pay.
Right.
To, okay, now if I work overtime, I get this, or if I do this. So it's like almost like that, okay, my time is now worth more. And not only is my time worth more, if I do this or I do that, I can get more pay and I can do different things. And I felt like, my eyes had been open, so to speak, because I had been so structured in the military to be like, okay, this is this. And the amount of money that I was saving back then wasn't, I didn't consider it significant. And I was like, Carlos is never going to be a millionaire doing this. It's going to be a decent investment, but I'm not going to be a millionaire. It's like, but what I will say is that it was preparing me for, I'd say mentally preparing me for where I am today.
Yeah, you created habits, right? Again, back to, it's not the dollar amount that you save. That can always grow over time. But if you create a habit in your mind, this is normal. Yeah. I save money. That's what I do because I already learned that's the fact that if I want to have something later in life, I need to do that. And so even though, and all of us can go in waves of how much we can invest, right? Nothing's ever straight up. Because nothing in life is that. Even if it plateaus for a little bit, but it's going to have its ups and downs. But over time, right, you'll reap good rewards, which you're on that path at this point. So talk to me about, you've talked to your kids in deep conversations about these things?
Yes. In fact, I have something I tell them all the time. And it's something that Rick told me. He said, Carlos, pay yourself first. And I was like, what?
Love that phrase. I love that phrase.
He says, pay yourself first. I was like, I didn't understand the concept. And I was like, okay, I get paid every 2 weeks, Rick. What are you talking about? And he just kind of like goes, you don't understand what I'm saying. I was like, so break it down for me. He says, from your paycheck, pay yourself first. And I want you to invest the money first. So one, I would prefer if you can get that money taken out of your paycheck and sent directly to your investment first, before you even see it. And that's when I kind of like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So when I got on with Metro and then said, okay, wait a minute, hold on a second here. I need to adopt that strategy. Because now, I like to spend money. That's one of my flaws. So if I could put that money away before I even get it, and it starts working for me over here, I tell my kids about that all the time. I tell them, say, hey, you need to pay yourself first. You need to do this first. So I have some kids. I have three kids, and one of my kids just bought her second house, and I'm very proud of that. And I think that she's on her way. She's married, and I got a couple of grandkids, and she's doing pretty darn good for herself. She has a stable career, and she's doing very well for herself. Great husband, and they've learned from our mistakes, and they're going on. Now my other two, well.
Well, again, and we share these things with our children, and we want to sit them down and give those lessons. But as you said earlier, sometimes people aren't just ready to receive it. Right. But even though we try, I
believe they will.
They'll remember that what you try to do, and sometimes they'll come back. Hey, remember that conversation? I really didn't pay attention or listen, but I'd like to know a lot more now, right?
Yes.
And so, but they would never be able to come and do that if you didn't try the initial one. But I think let's give the takeaway to the audience out there that at a young age, again, you had the instinct to hustle to get the things that you wanted. Chose a very safe career path, going military, and then with Metro where you are now. Had an awesome mentor that I don't think you'd probably be where you are today without that gentleman, it sounds like, of the things that he taught you. Pay yourself first, Warren Buffett tells us that, is a concept that, man, I wish more people would understand, because people who say, or in investing, as soon as I pay this off, or as soon as I pay that off, then I'll start doing that, and guess what? That's generally never happens, because if you once you pay off one bill, you just go get another one. Most people, right?
That's what happens, because once you have that discretionary income and it starts looking good to you, it gets
you find something else to spend the money on.
It's like my dad says, it's getting hot in your pocket. You want to go spend something, put on something else. So.
Yeah. So, wow, I think what a great takeaway that was for you guys out there. Is one, man, if you got to hustle, go hustle. If you have to hustle because you're making just enough money to pay your bills, and you need to invest, you want a better future for yourself, then go do it. Because when you hustle, that could be a 5-hour-a-week hustle, it could be a 10-hour-a-week, it could be a 20-hour-a-week hustle, whatever it takes. All our aspirations are on different levels of what we all want out of life. But I think the money lesson is do what you got to do. Surround yourself with the right people. And try to be a mentor to somebody else. Pass it down. We got to pass these things along. I think this conversation today will have people hopefully talking more about the importance of a mentor, because the mentor in your life really helped you a lot.
Yes, he did.
Man, Carlos, thanks for coming out and sharing your story. There's people out there going, right now, right? They're like, man, who am I hanging with, and who's my next mentor? So great job on sharing that story with us. So guys, remember, if you're watching me on YouTube, go ahead and hit that like button, smash the like button. If you're listening to me on the podcast, subscribe. A lot of great stories every week. They come out every Wednesday at 7 a.m. So until next week.
Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed that episode. Really enjoyed making all these episodes for you. Remember, we're just having conversations with people's journey with money, and the things they did right with it, the things that did wrong with it, and how did they really come about getting their mindset with money. So every episode's different. We all have a good takeaway from them. So do me a favor, hit the like button, smash the like button, and subscribe to my channel, because every episode that I do is going to be different, as all our journeys are different. So you guys take care, and we'll talk to you next week.